It's amazing because, I mean, basically we're doing the same thing we were doing 3 years ago, when nothing really has changed for us except for the parties we get to.
He was one of the breakout stars of Storage Wars, the fiery risk-taker, the partner in both business and life with Brandi Passante, and a man who made millions tuning abandoned storage lockers into gold. But now, at 47, Jarrod Schulz has finally admitted why he'll never return to the show that made him famous. And the truth? It's far more heartbreaking and complicated than anyone expected. When Storage Wars first premiered in 2010, it quickly became a phenomenon. The concept was simple: abandoned storage lockers, risky bets, and hidden treasures. But what made the show unforgettable were the personalities. Among them, Jarrod Schulz stood out immediately. Together with his partner, Brandi Passante, Jarrod built a reputation as the underdog who was always hustling for the next big score. He was loud, competitive, and often clashed with rivals like Dave Hester. Fans loved his energy and loved the dynamic, sometimes fiery relationship between him and Brandi even more. They weren't just buyers, they were the young guns trying to prove themselves against veterans of the trade. But behind the laughs, the drama, and the occasional jackpot locker, Jarrod's life was filled with challenges the cameras didn't always show. Over the years, his journey took him through highs of fame and success, and lows that ultimately pushed him away from the spotlight forever. So, what really happened to Jarrod Schulz? Why won't he ever return to Storage Wars? To understand, we need to go back to where it all began. Before he was a reality TV star, Jarrod was just a regular guy hustling to make ends meet. Born in Long Beach, California, he worked in sales and management before stumbling into the world of storage auctions. With little more than ambition and a sharp eye, Jarrod began building a reputation in the Southern California auction circuit. When Storage Wars launched, Jarrod and Brandi brought something fresh to the cast. They weren't millionaires like Barry Weiss. They weren't veterans with decades of experience like Daryl Sheets. They were young, ambitious, and relatable. For many viewers, they represented the everyday couple trying to chase the American dream, even if it meant taking risks on abandoned storage lockers. Their chemistry on screen was electric. Brandi's cautious nature clashed with Jarrod's impulsive style, creating tension that made every bid exciting. While Brandi often scolded Jarrod for reckless purchases, he had a knack for spotting overlooked items with hidden value. Together, they built a brand that extended far beyond the show. Jarrod's rise was fast. His brash personality made him a central figure, while his partnership with Brandi gave fans someone to root for. The young guns became stars in their own right, opening their own thrift store and using the show's fame to fuel their growing business. But success came at a cost. Fame is rarely easy, and for Jarrod, the pressures of being in the public eye began to take their toll. So, what was happening behind the cameras that would eventually push Jarrod to the breaking point? For Jarrod Schulz, Storage Wars was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it gave him money, recognition, and a platform that transformed his life. On the other, it magnified every flaw, every conflict, and every personal struggle. The fame meant constant filming schedules, appearances, and the pressure to perform. Every locker bid had to be bigger, every reaction more dramatic, every rivalry heightened for television. For Jarrod, who had entered the business simply to provide for his family, the shift toward showmanship was exhausting. Then there was the strain on his relationship with Brandi. On screen, fans loved their banter. Off-screen, the constant stress of business, fame, and raising a family weighed heavily on them. Disagreements about money, about risk-taking, and about priorities began to bleed from their personal life into their professional one. Jarrod was no stranger to conflict, often butting heads with fellow buyers. But behind those battles was a deeper frustration. He was no longer just buying lockers. He was performing. The authentic excitement that had once fueled him began to feel like a script. By the mid-2000s, Jarrod's relationship with the show was already strained. Yet, Fans had no idea just how close he was to walking away. But what could drive someone at the peak of reality TV fame to turn his back on everything he built? For years, Jarrod Schulz and Brandi Passante were the heart of storage wars. Their playful, sometimes fiery chemistry was more than just entertainment. It was the glue that kept many viewers invested in the show. Fans speculated endlessly about whether they were married, how they managed their kids, and how they balanced business with family life. But behind the cameras, their relationship was under enormous strain. Fame amplified everything: the financial pressures, the long hours, and the disagreements about risk. Brandi, cautious by nature, wanted stability and security. Jarrod, impulsive and adventurous, often leaned toward big risks with big rewards. What made them fun to watch on TV was the same dynamic that pulled them apart in real life. By the late 2010s, rumors started swirling that the couple had separated. Fans noticed they weren't appearing together at events, and their interactions on social media became less frequent. The speculation was confirmed when Brandi publicly revealed that the two had split. Quietly, without fanfare, and without the explosive drama fans might have expected. For Jarrod, the breakup was more than just a personal loss. His identity on Storage Wars had always been tied to Brandi. They weren't just individuals, they were a team, branded as the Young Guns. With their partnership dissolved, Jarrod's role on the show felt uncertain. Could he continue without the chemistry that made him famous? The split also raised practical challenges. Their business ventures, their store, and even the shared responsibility of raising their two children became battlegrounds for negotiation. Jarrod had to redefine not only his career, but also his personal life. And yet, while breakups are always hard, for Jarrod, it was just the beginning of even bigger challenges. If losing Brandi on-screen and off wasn't enough, the business world was about to deliver its own painful blow. During their peak years on Storage Wars, Jarrod and Brandi leveraged their fame into running their own thrift and secondhand stores. The shops became physical extensions of their TV personas, places where fans could walk in and buy items similar to those they saw the couple uncover on the show. At first, the stores did well. The combination of TV fame and Jarrod's aggressive buying style gave them inventory, while Brandi's organizational skills brought structure. But as time went on, the reality of running brick-and-mortar shops set in. Competition was fierce, expenses piled up, and the economy shifted. After the split, managing those stores became even more complicated. Without Brandi by his side, Jarrod had to juggle responsibilities on his own. And for someone who thrived on risk-taking more than long-term planning, stability in business was difficult to maintain. Eventually, reports surfaced that Jarrod's store had closed its doors. For fans, it was a shocking development. How could one of Storage Wars' biggest stars, a man who once stood shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Dave Hester and Barry Weiss, find himself losing the very business that fame had built? The truth was harsher. Reality TV stardom doesn't guarantee lifelong wealth. For Jarrod, the end of his store wasn't just a financial loss, it was a symbolic one. It represented the unraveling of the life he and Brandi had worked so hard to build during their years on Storage Wars. And as if failed businesses and a broken partnership weren't enough, Jarrod's personal life soon made headlines for reasons that had nothing to do with storage lockers. For Jarrod Schulz, the end of his relationship with Brandi and the closure of his stores were heavy enough blows. But soon, he found himself under a harsher spotlight: legal trouble. In 2021, Jarrod made headlines after being arrested on charges related to domestic issues involving Brandi. Though the case was reported with caution and eventually moved through the legal system without resulting in prison time, the damage to Jarrod's reputation was significant. Fans who had once cheered for the fiery risk-taker now questioned his character. Reality TV fame had once made Jarrod a household name. Now it made his struggles public fodder. tabloids covered every detail, and social media erupted with opinions. For a man who had once thrived on his larger-than-life personality, the glare of negative attention was overwhelming. The arrest and its aftermath not only strained Jarrod's personal life, but also effectively ended any possibility of returning to Storage Wars. A show built on quirky personalities and light-hearted competition couldn't afford to be overshadowed by controversy. For producers, Jarrod had become too much of a liability. This chapter of his life was one of the hardest. For years, he had been celebrated for his confidence and bravado. Now, those same qualities were recast as arrogance and recklessness. The public, once his audience, became his jury. And yet, in the wake of legal troubles and public scrutiny, Jarrod tried to pick up the pieces of his life. But what does life look like for a man who has stepped out of the reality TV spotlight? When the dust settled, Jarrod Schulz found himself in a position he hadn't faced in over a decade: life outside of television. For many fans, his absence from Storage Wars was glaring. After all, he had been part of the DNA of the show since its earliest days. His fiery bidding wars with Dave Hester, his banter with Brandi, and his endless chase for the big score had made him unforgettable. Without him, Storage Wars simply felt different. So what has Jarrod been doing since? For one, he's kept a relatively low profile. While some of his castmates leaned into social media fame or spin-off projects, Jarrod has mostly stayed in the background. He's continued to work in business, occasionally attending auctions and dabbling in side hustles, but no longer with the high visibility of reality TV cameras following him. In interviews and appearances, Jarrod has hinted at wanting to rebuild his life away from the spotlight. Fame, once a blessing, had become a burden. The constant scrutiny of his personal life, the collapse of his partnership with Brandi, and the challenges of keeping businesses afloat left him disillusioned with television. Yet, despite all the setbacks, Jarrod hasn't lost his spark entirely. He's been seen at events, laughing with friends, and enjoying life in smaller ways. He may no longer be the man making wild bids on lockers in front of millions of viewers, but he's still the risk-taker at heart, just operating on a different scale. But fans continue to ask the same burning question. With so much history tied to Storage Wars, why won't Jarrod Schulz ever return to the show? At 47, Jarrod Schulz has made it clear his days on Storage Wars are behind him. But why? What exactly pushed him to walk away from the very show that made him a household name? The reasons are layered, and together they paint a picture of a man who has outgrown the spotlight and been scarred by it. 1. The breakup with Brandi. Jarrod and Brandi weren't just a TV couple, they were the Young Guns brand of Storage Wars. Their chemistry, their constant banter, and their fiery clashes defined the show's early years. Without Brandi, Jarrod lost the dynamic that made his character work. Returning alone would only remind fans of what had been lost. 2. The business collapse. The closure of his thrift store wasn't just a financial setback. It was a symbolic one. His stores had been tied directly to his role on the show. Without them, Jarrod lost the ability to showcase what made his buys worthwhile. Appearing on TV without a thriving business behind him would feel hollow, even humiliating. 3. Legal troubles. Perhaps the biggest barrier to his return has been his highly publicized legal trouble. Reality TV thrives on drama, but it doesn't survive controversy that turns toxic. Producers would never risk bringing him back and tarnishing the show's image. For Jarrod, this door is firmly closed. 4. Personal burnout. More than anything, Jarrod seems tired of it all. Reality TV fame is unforgiving. Every mistake, every flaw, every private moment becomes public property. After years of cameras in his face and fans dissecting every decision, Jarrod seems to have decided that peace and privacy are more valuable than another season of fame. Together, these reasons create a wall that no reunion, no paycheck, and no nostalgia can break down. Jarrod Schulz has made his choice. He will never return to Storage Wars, but that doesn't mean he hasn't left behind a powerful legacy. For better or worse, Jarrod Schulz will always be remembered as one of the defining figures of Storage Wars. His story is both cautionary and inspiring, a tale of a man who rose from anonymity to international fame, only to walk away when the cost became too high. The Young Gun era. In the early seasons, Jarrod and Brandi represented the dream of possibility. They weren't millionaires like Barry Weiss or hardened veterans like Daryl Sheets. They were everyday people, risking it all for a shot at success. Their struggles made them relatable, and their victories made them fan favorites, the rivalries. Jarrod also brought energy to the show through his rivalries. His clashes with Dave Hester, his competitive fire at auctions, and his bold, sometimes reckless, bids created drama that kept audiences hooked. He wasn't afraid to lose because he knew that sometimes the thrill of the chase was just as entertaining as the prize. The human side. More than anything, Jarrod reminded viewers that reality TV stars are still human. They deal with family struggles, business challenges, and personal demons just like anyone else. His very public breakup, his legal troubles, and his eventual retreat from fame exposed the darker side of celebrity, but also made his story feel raw and real. Jarrod's legacy is complex. He's remembered as a hustler, a risk-taker, a partner, and a fighter. But he's also remembered as a man who burned out under the weight of fame. And that leaves fans with one lingering question. What does the future look like for Jarrod Schulz? A man who built his identity on taking risks, but now seems to crave a quieter life. So, where is Jarrod Schulz today? After stepping away from Storage Wars and facing some of the hardest years of his life, Jarrod has slowly been piecing together a quieter, more grounded existence. He's no longer the fiery auction star making headlines for outrageous bids. Instead, he's returned to what he knows best, hustling in smaller, more personal ways. Jarrod still attends storage auctions and resale events, but these days he does it without cameras following his every move. For him, it's back to basics, finding items, flipping them for profit, and keeping things low-key. Jarrod has also leaned into local business opportunities. While his earlier thrift store venture collapsed, he's remained entrepreneurial. From working with bar and restaurant ventures to dabbling in real estate opportunities, Jarrod continues to chase deals. Just not with the same high-profile pressure he once faced. Most importantly, Jarrod seems focused on his family and his personal life. He continues to co-parent his 2 children with Brandi, despite the challenges of their split, and has made efforts to provide stability for them. For a man who once thrived on risk and chaos, this quieter focus is perhaps the biggest shift of all. And yet, fans can't help but wonder, is Jarrod truly content with this new, quieter life? Or is part of him still chasing the thrill that made him a star? Jarrod Schulz's story is more than just reality TV gossip. It's a cautionary tale about the price of fame, the fragility of partnerships, and the struggle to redefine yourself after the cameras stop rolling. Lesson 1. Fame is a double-edged sword. Storage Wars gave Jarrod wealth, recognition, and opportunity, but it also magnified his flaws, put his personal life under a microscope, and eventually left him vulnerable to scrutiny he couldn't escape. Fame opened doors, but it also closed others permanently. Lesson 2. Relationships are the real foundation. Jarrod's success was tied to Brandi. Together, they were magnetic. Apart, both had to carve out their own identities. Their split not only ended their personal relationship, but also fractured their professional brand, leaving Jarrod adrift in ways fans didn't fully realize until much later. Lesson 3. Reinvention is hard but possible. Life after Storage Wars hasn't been glamorous for Jarrod, but it has been real. He's learning to live without the spotlight, to focus on smaller ventures, and to rebuild at his own pace. It's not flashy, but it's honest. And for a man who once thrived on risk, honesty may be the safest gamble of all. Ultimately, Jarrod's story isn't just about why he left Storage Wars, it's about why he won't go back. The show gave him everything, and it took just as much away. To return would be to reopen old wounds, to relive mistakes, and to sacrifice the peace he's only just begun to find. At 47, Jarrod Schulz has revealed the truth. He will never return to Storage Wars. The reasons are personal, professional, and deeply human. From his split with Brandi to the collapse of his businesses, from the glare of legal troubles to the heavy weight of fame, Jarrod has chosen peace over publicity. For fans, it's bittersweet. We'll always remember the brash, risk-taking young gun who turned storage lockers into treasure hunts. We'll remember the chemistry with Brandi, the rivalries with Dave Hester, and the moments of victory and defeat that kept us glued to the screen. But perhaps the greatest lesson Jarrod leaves us with is this: sometimes the bravest choice isn't chasing the next big win. Sometimes it's knowing when to walk away. So what do you think? Did Jarrod make the right decision by leaving Storage Wars behind, or should he have fought to make a comeback? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories of your favorite stars. Because in the end, Jarrod Schulz's story reminds us that the real gamble isn't in storage lockers, it's in life itself.